Hello, my fellow readers. This is I, Dark Symphony 777, with another fan fiction reading. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, and leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story. So, this is A Quiet House. It's written by Guivan. I'm pretty sure I butchered that name, like horribly. So, here we go. Oh, it's a radio dramas. Okay. Right. That's the last of it, I think. Martin clapped his hands together and raised his eyebrows questioningly at Arthur. Arthur mimicked his satisfied clap. Should be Skip. Only maybe I'll just take one last quick look inside. Make sure I haven't missed anything. Dear heart, you had about 12 last quick look arounds already. Take any more, you won't make it to Mopsy's at all, Carolyn interrupted. Yeah, you know how if you really use something, you just sort of stop seeing it? Like the stairwell. Because even though I use the stairwell every morning when I come down the stairs, I don't really think about it. So even if I thought about it, I probably couldn't tell you if it's on the right or the left. Even though I know it's on the right. Martin, get in the van and start driving, will you? We'll be along as soon as I can shove him in the car. And that was that. Martin, who was somehow even a little more pathetic looking when dressed in worn jeans and tee that showed his scrawny frame rather than an oversized costume uniform, unloaded the van at Mopsy's flat, even carrying everything to its proper room and helping shift the furniture to make room for Arthur's things, while Arthur himself gabbled excitedly with his girlfriend over how best to share mantle space between her pony club trophies and his random collections. She couldn't tip her pilot, of course. She had balked at paying him at all, until he pointed out that this man with the van thing was indeed his only paying job. But he seemed perfectly happy to accept a welcome home Arthur meal as a substitute so long as the meal came in cardboard cartons, rather than Arthur's own hands. And the evening ended quite cheerfully on all sides. Arthur and Mopsy trundled off to organize their bedroom. Martin continually rubbed his stomach all the way back to his van. Carolyn went home to a blissfully quiet house. Arthur always left the radio or a CD playing at night. The silence, at long last, would be wonderful. She took a long bath, drank a glass of wine in her pajamas, in front of a program Arthur would have been utterly bored by, and went up around midnight, long past Arthur's usual bedtime, to our dark, quiet room. She didn't sleep a wink. Carolyn, I was just about to send out Sir to check for four approaching horsemen. What do you want now, Douglas? Carolyn snapped. She was tired and not in the mood for mouthy, sarcastic pilots. I, fearless leader? I wanted nothing more than to allay my curiosity as to your whereabouts. Not every day you show up even later than I do. Never, in fact. I just worried that hell might have been feeling a touch of autumn chill. Douglas purred gleefully, sitting back in his chair. A cup of coffee and phone lay on the empty half-desk before him. Martin, on the other side, sat before several neat stacks of paperwork and was studiously avoiding her gaze, clearly not wanting to get into a turf roar so early in the morning. Arthur was nowhere to be seen. Yes, very amusing, Douglas. Where's my son? Carolyn set her purse in a large paper bag on one of the free chairs. Who can predict the movements of the slippery steward? He's outside, Carolyn. Martin interjected quickly. Mopsy rang and he stepped out to answer it. I think she was asking what he wanted for supper, but then they were talking about squids and chameleons. He trailed off, frowning a little. What's that? What's what? She asked impatiently. They had only had 40 minutes before the client was due to arrive, and she did not want to leave Douglas any more opportunities to taunt her for her unheard of lateness. The smell. Martin persisted. The smelly smell. I gotta smell the smells. Smelly. I couldn't resist. It's like, I don't remember, but it smells like muffins, Douglas cut in with a roll of his eyes. Really, Martin, I know you practically patented the Victorian Orphan Act. Surely even you remember what blueberry muffins smell like. Yes, well, Carolyn said sharply. I was running short on time this morning. No, I do not require your opinion just now, Douglas. I picked up a box of muffins from the bakery on my way here. I overestimated my appetite. She reached into the paper bag and pulled out the cardboard box used for large orders at the only bakery open before 6 in the morning, and dropped it casually on her pilot's desk. Here, enjoy. And never let it be said again that I do not provide for my faithful minions. Douglas sorted and picked up his own. Thanks, Carolyn, but I've no interest in being poisoned today by whatever you snuck into your leftovers. Martin eyed the box with obvious longing. They shot a beseeching glance Douglas's way, unseen, as the older man was already absorbed in something on the screen. He swallowed visibly and reached out to the box. Well, Douglas finally glanced up with a look of disbelief. Sir is feeling particularly brave today, he commented in mock surprise. Martin shrank and snatched back his hand, hiding his skinny, bony wrist from view. "No, thank you, Carolyn," he muttered. Carolyn sighed. "Martin, I realize the wife look is incomprehensibly popular just now, but I don't really intend to spend my last moments hurtling down into the Atlantic Ocean because my foolish captain believes visual ribs will ensnare a partner." She's right. Don't do that. That's like a one-way eating. That's like a one-way ticket to an eating disorder. Now, I expect to see nothing left of those muffins but crumbs on your shirt by the time I return. Or I will instruct Alfred to make and see to it that you eat every single one of your in-flight meals until you are approaching your first officer in width. And I'm sure even you can guess that will take a very long time indeed, and carry with it a distinct risk of cholesterol trouble. Hey, who complain to someone who cares, Douglas? I'm going to find Arthur, and then I will fetch your client, and I will be back in 30 minutes. Carolyn waved her hands in a shooing motion. "Go to," and she left. Two pilots stared at the door as it swung shut. "Douglas?" Martin started hesitantly. "What was that?" "That, Martin? Something you should commit to memory. This is a thing you will quite never see again," Douglas informed him seriously, still without looking away from the ward hut door. "Oh," Martin was even more confused now. "What do you mean? What was it?" "That," said Douglas slowly, "was something that even I have absolutely no understanding of whatsoever. And as I'm sure you are by now aware, I always understand everything. As I said, mark this moment well in your history, as it shall never come again." Martin snorted. "Rubbish. You've been baffled by loads of things." "Like what?" Douglas asked sharply, clearly affronted. "Well, like what's actually in Surprising Rice?" Martin, God, is baffled by Surprising Rice. It doesn't count. Fair enough. Well then, stewardess and pair two actually turned you down. Thanks about time you went out to do that walk around. There's a good chap, Douglas said simply and turned back to his phone. Ooh, busted. Martin was always a little nervous about landing in Boston. Douglas supposed he could be forgiven for this, given that his first time there involved being an accessory to murder and rugby tackled by a number of American airport security. Still, he couldn't tone down the teasing too much. The sight of his captain quivering in his seat like a jellyfish, and just as damp and pale, was far too much to resist. "Is sir quite well?" "What? No, I'm fine. Of course I'm fine." "Would I not be fine?" "Convincing words indeed." "Sir, intending to get out of the airplane at any point in our stay?" Of course, Douglas, he snapped irritably. "I was just doing post-landing checks. You know, things you always forgot about and will one day probably cost the wing." Douglas put up his hand in mock surrender, but before he could throw out a retort, the flat deck door was shoved open and Carolyn barreled through. "The plane is on the ground, Martin. Gertie doesn't need your help to sit still on the tarmac. Why are we not leaving yet?" Douglas puffed up with a smirk. "Sorry, Carolyn, but our esteemed captain can tell me himself," Carolyn interrupted. "Now, dear Martin, are you quite well?" Martin somehow managed to flush red in embarrassment on top of his nervous pallor. "I already asked him," Douglas told her. "He claims, quite effusively, to be fine. In, what was it? 3 different ways? 4? I think that's rather conclusive, don't you?" Carolyn wasn't paying him any attention, but frowning down at the younger pilot. "You look dreadful. Do you feel hot or cold?" "Is she having empty nest syndrome? Is that... Goodness, having the word... Oh, yeah, she has empty nest syndrome. Yeah. That is just so... Okay. So it's a kind of nervous thing. Okay. I want to see how this plays out. She didn't wait for an answer, but pressed her back of her hand to Martin's forehead. Douglas gaped. "Martin, don't make any sudden movements. She's just trying to slow you in a false sense of security before she strikes at your neck." I love this Douglas guy. He's so ridiculous. He hissed urgently. Shut up, Douglas! Martin, you're all clammy and warm. When we get to the hotel, I want you to go straight to bed. I'll bring you something to eat and a packet of lunches when I unpack my bag. Douglas, the two of you are sharing a room, so I expect you to drink lots of orange juice and be careful not to get sick yourself. Yeah, that's emptiness syndrome. That is emptiness syndrome. He patted Martin's shoulder gently. Wait here, Martin. I'll go find us a cab. I know emptiness syndrome is like a very serious thing, but it's still funny what she's saying. I think it'll be explained like near the end of the story where she has it, because if not otherwise, I'll kind of summarize emptiness syndrome at the end. Let's continue. If anything, Douglas thought as Carolyn bustled away, Martin looked even more terrified now than he'd been Ross, remembering his captivity in an American security room. Don't worry, Martin, he said consolingly. Think of it like Hansel and Gretel. At least they got to eat lots of sweets before the evil witch decided to eat them. She'll probably bring you lots more muffins and things before she starts sharpening her knives. Oh, he's not wrong. Martin whimpered. If this was a comedy, is this a comedy story? No, it's family. Okay. Okay. Martin was always alert. Oh, no, I already read this part. Went the wrong area. Carolyn was a little annoyed by the time they returned to the thin airspace. Alter had someone managed to charge the inside of the microwave, and aware that she wouldn't be able to wait until they got home to give him a lecture on why planes and fires are not the best of friends, she had to quietly scold him in the galley, which led to her distraught son moping pitifully in front of the passengers and pilots for the rest. Okay, so they're a flight crew. They're a plane crew. Okay. Or a private jet crew. I don't know. I'm guessing. I don't know anything about cabin pressure. I'm guessing based on the description that's like they're like a what's the name of the pilots that have like special clients? I can't remember the name. I'm actually drawing a blank of what it's called. Oh well. Where was it? Okay, Douglas had given her a reproachful look when she tried to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the cabin by ducking into the flight deck, and Martin seemed unduly alarmed by her sudden appearance. Really, Martin, I know I don't spend much time up here, but I'm not going to whip you for your mistakes while you're still making the plane stay up. Carolyn grumbled irritably. No, I imagine you saved that particular pleasure for her, Douglas muttered under his breath. Martin spluttered. However, she outed loudly, only one pilot is required from now on until we land, so you, Douglas, are not remotely safe. Oh no! Oh no! Douglas, what's up? The man swiftly sat up a little straighter, and Martin quickly cut off what was sure to be a scathing retort by a contracting ATC. Tower, this is Golf Tango, India. Ah, the little kite that could. And how were the colonies? Carl! Sorry, Martin, I'll suppose you want to be back Achoo! Oh dear, Carolyn said. That sounds like a nasty cold. I wonder if that's where you got yours from, Martin. I hope he's bundling up and taking medicine so he doesn't pass it on to anyone else, Martin. Ask him. Martin inexplicably blanched. Carl, we'll be there in 5 minutes, and we need to land. Please let us land, he begged quickly. Smirked. Right you are, Golf Tango, India. Clear for landing. You got your pick of runways. Because no one else has bothered to show up today. Everything's up. All right, up there, Martin. Yes. Everything's fine. Fine. We're fine. Thank you, Tower, Martin babbled. The radio crackled a few times as though Carl had prepared to speak and then stopped. Sorry. Anyway, Martin, we ATC guys have to go through hijacking and terrorism courses, same as you pilots. And I got to say, you're showing several of the major indications of distress and potential emergency scenarios. Carl said seriously. What? Martin yelled, no. Everything's absolutely fine. His voice steadily climbed in pitch. The brothers were fine. No hijackers. Everything's fine. Lucky Cheese 71. Drum potato. Whatever the secret, everything fine in his praises. I'm saying it. Right. Carl said slowly. Is Douglas there? Right. What? But I'm the captain. Yes, hello. Captain Douglas here. You find our internet leader and the most eloquent from this morning. Right. Douglas, has your plane been hijacked? Not to my knowledge. No. Douglas replied lightly. And as I'm sitting where they have to be sitting in order to hijack it, I'm fairly sure I know. And, sorry, has your plane been boarded by one or more terrorists? Well, Carolyn isn't the exactly kind of bosses, but I wouldn't go so far as to call her a terrorist. They're fighting, bro. I love this Douglas guy. I love this Douglas guy. Pilots, shut up. Carl, this is Carolyn. Our plane is perfectly safe and about to land. As soon as we have done so, I will be making my way to you, so as to inquire as to why you chose to come to work whilst clearly ill and therefore risking infecting pilots and vital ground staff. You're not wrong. There was a long pause, broken only by Douglas' rather immature figure. It's actually pretty funny. Welcome home, Captain of India. And Carl said abruptly, then signed off. Oh, that's funny. I know it's not supposed to be funny, but it's kind of funny in a very serious way. It's like it's funny in like a factual way. Like he's telling the truth, but instead it's just the way it's presented. It just makes it funny. Like I don't know why. It just made it funny. Martin was well known for arriving early to the airfield, eager to fly and anxious to allow plenty of time to fill out the flight plan, do a thorough walkthrough, and perform all the pre-flight checks he and the manual thought necessary. Not just a few Douglas agreed were a bit vital, he was also well known for staying late to fill out his and Douglas logs and make sure all the other paperwork was up to date. He was also well familiar with being teased about these habits. So after half a dozen flights where Carolyn was already in her office when he arrived and was still there when he left, he was a little concerned by her suddenly found dearth of things that needed to be done at the airfield. He was more concerned that when he arrived every morning, something warm and breakfast-like was waiting for him. Yeah, that's emptiness syndrome. Congratulations, Martin, you're a son now. Simply used to picking up breakfast for both myself and Arthur, she snapped while he tenderly inquired as to the now regular presence of blueberry muffins and bacon buddies on his and Douglas's desk, and I don't pay you to interrogate me while a fight plan lays unfiled. Pay me at all, Martin muttered irritably, but went back to the flight plan. By the end of the month, though, even Douglas had noticed Carolyn's new habit, and he wasn't put off by the glare. Carolyn, don't you think you're spending a little too much time here? He asked, pulling out his coat as Martin got started on their logs for the business put to Stockholm. I mean, I'm not normally one to pry, but the fire crew was starting to think our departure hut has developed a ghost. Carolyn raised a brow that promised severe pain should he continue on his current train of thought. Martin frowned. Do places develop ghosts, or do they earn them or something? No. I read about this once. They spring up whenever they died if they had a violent or traumatic death, Arthur said excitedly, and then he haunt people so someone can set right whatever isn't about how they died. Not that they died, obviously. I don't think anyone could do that. And even though it would be brilliant. Indeed, Douglas agreed indulgently. If you could bring someone back to life, Arthur. Arthur's eyes went wide. Oh, but there's loads of people. Queen Mum, the guy who wrote Winnie the Pooh, Dumbledore, everyone else in Harry Potter, so Voldemort, obviously. And the rest of the bad guys, I wouldn't bring them back. Those are so curious choices. That's actually kind of curious. The theme song of Postman Pat suddenly rang out in a tinny whine, making Martin jump. Arthur fumbled in his trouser pockets and pulled out his mobile. Oh, it's Mopsy. She's probably wondering where I am. I told her I'd be home around now. Bye, Skip. Bye, Douglas. Bye, Mom. He hurried out the departure hut, bringing his mobile to his ear, and they could hear him chattering away until the door swung shut. And I believe that's my cue to leave, Douglas said breezily. Don't stay too long, you two. I don't think we're actually allowed to use this place as a living space. Wait, I'll come with you. Martin spread now. Martin said quickly, hastily gathering his papers together and grabbing his flight bag. They strolled out together, Douglas muttering something quietly to Martin and making them both stifle chuckles. Bye, Carolyn, Martin cried over her shoulder. Then she was alone. Carolyn settled herself at her desk and began going over the accounts. MJN had done a healthy number of short day trips over the last month. Good for her, because she didn't have to shell out for hotel rooms or for business, as cargo flights rarely generated repeat business. People only moved across the country or bought too large for parcels every so often. After all, the door opened with a dull creak, and a woman even younger than Arthur slept in, wearing the yellow uniform on the airfield's maintenance hat. For your bin, she muttered. Anything for recycling? Carolyn eyed the woman critically. She looked half-dead on her feet, with dark shadows under her eyes, like she hadn't slept properly in days. Probably a student, Carolyn thought, working as a cleaner at an airfield to pay for her classes. Don't worry about it, dear, she said sympathetically. I'll get them myself when I lock up. The girl eyed her skeptically. Supposed to take your bin? She repeated slowly. And I told you not to bother, Karen said briskly. I'm perfectly capable of carrying two small office bins on my own. And skips are on their way to my car. Go along. Off with you. She shooed the clearly suspicious girl out of the hut. When Martin arrived for their head-night trip to Madrid, he paused outside. Her distinctive voice was audible even through the closed door. Carolyn's snarling certainly was. Carolyn, it's perfectly acceptable and understandable that you miss your son. I do not miss him. Missing is something weak-minded, vapid people do to other people they don't see on a weekly basis. It is also for people who are accustomed to living with and who suddenly and unexpectedly leave. Only if the you in that sentence is someone soppy and sentimental. Or possibly a mother who loves her son. Hercules Shipwright. That's his name? Hercules Shipwright. Is that his actual name? Hold on. That is his actual name. I don't know whether or not to laugh and say that's kind of a ridiculous name or cringe over the fact that it looks like someone just made put in like an airfield-based name generator and just typed up a name. Said, I like that. I'll pick that. That is such a ridiculous name. Back to the story. Hercules Shipwright, you are being utterly ridiculous. This conversation is over. This conversation is not over. You're clearly upset by Arthur leaving. Oh, now you're just exaggerating. No, I'm caring. Well, if that's your idea of caring, then I don't think you want to. There was a long pause. Well, came Herc's voice finally. Well, I see. Yes, Carolyn said haughtily. Very well then. Goodbye, Carolyn. Goodbye, Hercules. The hut door swung open and Martin barely had time to jump out of the way before Herc ran right into him. The door banged shut and Herc stared in surprise. Martin! Herc! I wasn't... I mean, I didn't mean to. Herc smiled. It looked rather forced. Not to worry, Martin. Carolyn was just telling me you'd be turning up any minute. He waved over her shoulder in the vague direction of Carolyn's offers. She got some muffins, I think, for you. Martin winced. Look, Herc. Sure, she didn't mean... Well, she meant it, obviously. She hasn't quite been herself since Arthur moved out. So I'm sure she really didn't mean it. I know. Herc sighed, glancing up as a small plane lined up for landing out over the airfield. And I expect you and Douglas are bearing the brunt of it. Just don't hold it too badly against her, will ya? Herc caught Martin's eyes and held firm. She would just admit to herself that missing her son does not make her a silly little lady. She'd be able to let this all go and get over it. Martin nodded, feeling very grateful for the noise of the landing jet engines as they probably prevented Carolyn overhearing her call her, however inadvertently, a silly little lady. He really didn't want to wash blood and guts over his crisp, clean uniform. Well, Herc said abruptly, I must be going. Have a good flight, Martin, and give my regards to Douglas. Thanks, Herc. Martin's replied half-heartedly as Herc strode off across the tarmac with a painfully stiff spine. He stayed outside, leaning against the hut wall while small crashes and bangs emanated from inside and wishing he'd smoked or someone to call on his mobile so he would look idle and cool, not like a man leaning on a hut because he was too frightened of his boss to go in. It was a little after 4 and a truck rumbled noisily past Carolyn's house as the first binman of the morning got to work. She'd been up for a while, never gone to bed really, even though she tried once, but the house felt too quiet and cold, even with central heating blasting higher than she could really afford to keep it and the TV droning on downstairs. Then she tried to sit up with a book but couldn't concentrate with the strong gust of wind outside scraping tree branches against one end of the house and rattling bins down the street. She almost gone to the phone and called Arthur at that, knowing how heavy winds always disturbed his sleep and the noises often gave him nightmares, but paused at the last moment with her finger on the first number. If Arthur was sleeping restlessly, Mopsy was there to take care of him. It wasn't her place anymore. Carolyn stood in the kitchen, leaned against the refrigerator and holding the same half-empty glass of wine, until the first rays of dawn sunlight began to filter through the windows. Then she turned and examined the calendar stuck to the fridge door. There were more empty squares than full ones. More days of wondering what fresh nonsense her exasperated son might be up to than knowing. Well, that just wouldn't do. Oh, no, I can already tell where this is going. Right, listen up, all you. There are changes to the schedule which have been added to the wall chart. If I were confident of your collective abilities to read and understand the wall chart, I'd be scoffing at cheat Danish right now while you go and examine it. However, I am not remotely convinced that you have any such abilities at all. So Martin and Arthur will eat the Danishes, and all three of you will listen as I explain it. Oh, I do it. She gone off the deep end. Alright, get a Danish. Douglas asked petulantly, crossing his arms and leaning back in his chair. Because you do not need a Danish. Anyway, I pay you to buy your own, Carolyn replied sternly. He caught Martin shooting a smarmy smirk Douglas's way out of the corner of her eye as he happily stuffed a piece of gooey pastry in his mouth. Now, if you glance the way of the wall chart, you will see that there are many, many more squares with writing in them than there was the last time you saw it. MDN has lowered his prices slightly in a promotional deal, and as a result, we have gained a significantly higher amount of business. We'll be flying as often as possible, as cheaply as possible. Martin, you know that any unnecessary diversions, repairs, or any other unforeseen expenses will be severely punished. You've been with us long enough that I don't need to elaborate. Douglas, forget about your sweet little gifting ring, because you won't have time to be visiting dear old international friends. Arthur, she eyed her son, who simply smiled cheerfully. Well, any questions? Douglas and Martin stared at her, clearly aghast. Just one, Douglas said rather coolly. Do you realize that the schedule you outline on the wall chart has Martin and I firmly on the absolute legal limit of flight time? Don't you? Of course, Carolyn replied briskly. If you were allowed to fly anymore, I had booked us more jobs. But if anything even goes slightly wrong, if we even have to divert around a thunderstorm or anything, Douglas and I will get in loads of trouble, Martin pointed out. You have to cut down the schedule, Carolyn. We'll be jet lagged and exhausted after 1 week like that. Let alone 4. This isn't safe. Precisely safe. That's why there are legal flight time limits. As you have pointed out, I kept the schedule within them. But, Martin, are you here to fly a plane or to argue? Because if it's the former, you had better get started on the flight plan. And if it's the latter, I simply don't care. I have work to do. Carolyn went full retard. Never go full retard. Wait, that's wrong. Carolyn went full crazy mom. Never go full crazy mom. Right, Ariel? Carolyn sternly avoided Arthur's slightly worried look and shut herself in her office. Douglas, what am I gonna do? Martin felt panic clawing up his throat. I won't have any time for van jobs for the next month. How am I supposed to pay my rent? Douglas was frowning pensively. Don't worry, Martin, he said soothingly. Carolyn's just going through a rough patch. We'll work something out. We always do, don't we? He wasn't fooling either of them. Arthur looked on, worried. By the end of the month, even Arthur had lost a little enthusiasm for flying. When Douglas asked about his subdued presence on the flight deck that evening on the way back from Cairo, he shrugged and said that he never realized flying could just feel like a job. Douglas himself was utterly exhausted, and he knew Martin felt even worse. They'd both been run on the ragged edges for 4 weeks with too little sleep. irregular meals, and a string of terrible hotels. During the few hours they stayed in, the Finn Douglas at least could drive home, collapse in his comfortable bed, and order in an obscene amount of Chinese takeaway, but he knew full well that Martin had nothing to return to but near empty cardboards and a tiny, dirty attic he's growing ever closer to being thrown out of. And he'd invite Martin over to share the fried rice. He really would have, but they were so sick of each other's presence by now that they nearly stopped playing word games entirely, so the other pilot probably wouldn't have willingly come even if he meant starving to death alone. The stress was clearly written in the deep lines of his freckled forehead, and his shaking heads every time he had a moment to think about home. Douglas knew the last straw had been broken when ATC gave the first officer instructions for landing, and his captain merely continued to stare out the window, more dazed and dreaming than awake. "I'll take the landing, shall I?" Douglas announced quietly into the darkened flight deck. Martin didn't respond. Douglas set his teeth. Time to stop. The landing wasn't quite up to the usual smooth standard, but Douglas figured he would be forgiven for that, seeing as it was his 20th landing in as many days. Even though he and Martin had started trading off evenly some time ago, Gertie slowed and wobbled to a stop. Martin finally stirred. "What? Here?" "Douglas, I'm so sorry. I meant to take the landing. I zoned out." "It's all right, Martin," Douglas muttered, patting him heavily on the shoulder. "Don't worry about it. We're both worn through. Go home and get some sleep. We're on standby for a week starting tomorrow, so you can come in as late as you like." "No!" Martin said frankly, his eyes wide and fever bright. "We can't come in late just because it's standby. That's so unprofessional. And what if they want to leave first thing in the morning?" Douglas sighed. "Martin, they wanted to leave first thing in the morning on the first day. Why would they book us for an entire week?" Martin groaned and rubbed his eyes painfully hard with his fist and started what sounded like another desperate apology. Douglas waved it off. "Don't worry about it. I'm just as tired and froggy-headed as you are. Go home, eat everything you have, and sleep about 18 hours. That's what I tend to do. Feel better in the morning." "If I still got a home to go to," Martin muttered suddenly. "The landlord was threatening last time that he'd chuck my things out if I can't come over rent by the 7th. How am I supposed to do that when we're spending tomorrow until the 6th on standby?" Douglas hesitated, then grasped his shoulder again firmly. "Look, Martin, you'd need a place to stay for a while. The last thing you probably want is to spend any more time in close quarters with me. But my house is big enough that we could avoid each other for a bit until the madness settles down. Or I could just lend you the money until Carolyn regains her sanity and you get the man business back underway." Martin smiled wearily. "Really wish I could just say no thanks, but..." "Well, thanks, Douglas. It's very decent of you to offer. Let you know. Carolyn, this has got..." I just noticed, like, the little dashaways looks like a little plane. So neat. "Carolyn, this has got to stop." Carolyn looked up from her paperwork. "The spinning of the earth, you mean? Clearly it must. My work-phobic first offer is still present after my work-obsessed captain has already departed." Douglas settled a sharp and no-nonsense expression on his face. Posture relaxed and hands in his pocket, but somehow still giving every indication that anyone who entertained any thoughts about taking control of the situation might as well give up without a struggle. "It's ridiculous threshold you set. It ends now. We'll get through the standby because we can't cancel on a client, but when it's over, you will not contact Martin and I for a full week for any reason whatsoever except to apologize for your sudden turn to ritual sadism. When that week is over, we will go back to our regular scanning." Carolyn scoffed. "What? Pray tell, shall I run my business on? Feelings and rainbows?" Douglas barely twitched the muscles around his eyes, but nevertheless managed to convey more sincere disapproval than the deepest frown he would have done. It suddenly occurred to Carolyn just how successful a shady dealer Douglas Richardson probably was. "You have run your business on less than that. Martin and I decide we're no longer stand for your abuse and leave the company," he said mildly. "Because we will, you know. We've worked it all out. He'll have to come live with me for a while. His landlord already declared he'll be throwing your unpaid pilot out of his attic in the student house if he can't come with rent by the 7th. And he can't, of course, because you not left him time to earn a single cent for groceries, let alone for rent. It's all right. We get on well enough, and it's just as easy to cook for two as for one. So for quite possibly the first time in a decade, the poor boy will some good regular meals down him. I've got enough friends in various places that'll find a new first officer seat without too much trouble. Probably at a pay cut. All right. Daughter can leave without her alliance. Martin will find another airline willing to take him. Obviously, he'll just have to give up on his dream of flying and be nothing more than a man with a van. But both of us will be better off doing that than allowing ourselves to be run into misery and exhaustion until one of us finally makes a fatal mistake and lets the plane fall out of the sky. Carolyn, for once in her life, couldn't think of a single thing to say. Douglas dropped her gaze and let the silence expand for a long moment. See you tomorrow, then. And he left. Arthur sidled in through the door behind him, biting his lip. Arthur, dear heart, Carolyn sighed. I'm really not in the mood for whatever has happened now. Fix it for yourself or you can wait until tomorrow. You really can't, Arthur said uncertainly, because Douglas is unhappy. Skip is even more unhappy. I'm not completely happy. I don't think you are either, Mum. I can't fix it on my own, and it can't really be anymore. Can it? Douglas and Martin are unhappy because they are lazy pilots being made to work like the rest of the world, Carolyn snapped. There's nothing to. You want me to move back in? Arthur blurted out suddenly. When Carolyn merely stared at him in surprise rather than answering, he rallied and carried on. Because it seems like you started being unhappy, and everything started to go wrong after I moved out and started living with Mopsy. So, do you want me to move back in? That makes things better. Arthur, Carolyn managed, in perfectly contempt, living on my own. How on earth do you think moving back into my house will solve whatever problems Douglas and Martin have dreamed up themselves? Arthur's shoulders slumped. Don't really know, he said resignedly. Only, I know I'm a clod, darling, a clod. But I thought about it, and I thought the timing matched up, so I wondered if maybe somehow it was all my fault. He finished with an awkward sort of shrug. Carolyn stared at him for a long moment. She looked at the bristling wall chart, the pilot's desk with countless empty coffee cups, and the wrapper from a granola bar that Martin had salivated shamefully over before eating, and her dejected son. She sighed, stood, and began gathering up her papers. There's nothing wrong, Arthur. Merely a misunderstanding. Everything will be back to normal soon. Oh, good, Arthur said, relieved. Yes, she's herded Arthur back outside, flicked off the lights, and locked the door. They began walking in silence to the car park. You know, Arthur said suddenly, I was going to ask you, Mum, but Mumsy said I shouldn't, because you're usually so very, very busy now. She said you probably just say no, only in a really long and sarcastic way. Kind of like Douglas, only with Douglas, he always manages to make the person asking him, whatever it is they're asking him to do, look like a bit of an idiot. And you always make him feel scared. And I know because in Ipswich, they say when a person suddenly really goes pale in the face and their hands start shaking a bit and they stumble backwards away from you, those are 3 really good indicators that they're probably really frightened. Light of my life, please do stop babbling and get to the point. Wait, would you maybe come over in the mornings and teach Mopsy how to cook? Because it turned out she's awful at it, and apparently she's allergic to anything I cook, and we're both really getting tired of beans on toast. Think about it. Pilots, attend! Martin raised bleary eyes and Douglas raised a sardonic brow. 2 men unconsciously leaning towards each other as if for group protection. We await your instructions with all apprehension. I'm sorry. Ability. Carolyn ignored her first officer and tapped the new one showing off on the wall chart. As you are aware, we will spend this week in standby. Next week, the world at large has apparently decided against air travel, so there are no bookings. I personally will be thoroughly enjoying the time off, so I expect not to see or hear from either of you. Martin looked as he'd been offered his own aeroplane. Douglas offered, lips twitched in a repressed smirk, and he inclined his head slightly. At the end of this week, we will go over future bookings. Any questions? The answer is no. Except for one, Douglas said immediately. Where are the muffins? I've gotten rather used to supplementing my eggs and bacon in the morning. Carolyn stared at him. Much as it pains me to deprive you of anything. Oh wait, it doesn't. I stopped eating muffins. Well, if you eat too much of the same food all the time, then you do get sick of them. Like, I've stopped eating meat lovers pizza because I ate too much working for Domino's, but potato. What happened to providing for your faithful minions? Douglas cried. But it was Martin's face that captured her attention, and Douglas too. A moment later, her captain appeared crestfallen and miserably disappointed. Of course, Carolyn realized a moment later, Douglas hadn't been exaggerating his financial situation, so warm muffins in the morning were probably the best food and the closest thing to a homemade treat that the boy had had in ages. A trifling pity, but no matter, said Douglas. Douglas said suddenly, I need to save up my appetite for tonight anyway. My daughter was supposed to come by. She's a pescatarian now. I told you that. But she's picked up that, flew at school and had to cancel, and now I got an certain amount of fish and vegetables to consume. I already started some things in the slow cooker this morning. Nothing to be done but eat it all tonight. How terrible for you, Martin. Martin muttered suddenly. It is, Douglas agreed. Settling his coffee down and angling toward the younger son. So terrible, in fact, that I'm even willing to ask you for help. What do you say, Captain? I'll even go ahead and make the dessert I had planned if you'll do all the washing up and promise not to talk about planes at the table. Martin looked skeptical. What sort of dessert? Vanilla cream cannoli with raspberries and lemon sorbet. Oh, that actually sounds good. Douglas offered. You'll find that my skills as a pastry chef quite match my talents with main courses. That is to say, they are superb. All right, then. Martin licked his lips and actually wriggled a little bit in his seat, apparently unbearably excited by the prospect of a whole home-cooked meal that consisted of more than pasta or beans. Douglas threw Carolyn a significant glance. You know, Carolyn, he drawled loudly, I've been thinking, and was just reminded, you ceaselessly insist that you can't pay our Supreme Commander. Because I can't. He overrode her smoothly, but surely you can at least save him a little petrol money. Martin drives to your house in the morning, and you drive it to and from the airfield. That'll save at least a few pounds a week. Won't it, Martin? Martin glanced uneasily at his bark. Well, it would, technically, but I wouldn't want to put her in any trouble. And anyway, I'm not sure how professional. All right. Have your way, Douglas, Carolyn snapped. Really? Both pilots looked unreasonably shocked. Of course, she said irritably. I'm not sure what sort of con you're running, Douglas, but I don't want any knowing part of it, so I'll just go along for now. Martin, we'll be at my house tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. But 7 o'clock, Martin. She quickly turned to her paperwork to block out Douglas' unbearably smug smile. The doorbell rang at precisely 7. Carolyn threw open the door, scowling. What do you think you're doing here? Martin staggered back a little on the step. You said yesterday, 7 o'clock. I said nothing of the sort. Carolyn threw the door open wider. I told you to arrive at 7:30. Why on earth would I tell you to arrive at 7 when we don't have to be at the airfield until 8? I assure you, Martin, I do not relish your company and conversation so much that I would be willingly endure it any longer than necessary. No, I heard you. Definitely said 7. Martin, who do you think knows better what I said? I being the one who said it, or you, the questionably sane one with inner ear problem? But, come on inside. You're letting the cold in. Carolyn strode back towards the kitchen, leaving Martin to close the door behind him and slink warily down the hall. The oven beeped loudly, and she shut off the timer. Grabbing a pair of oven gloves and pull out a tray of bubbling Chelsea buns, Martin watched with wide eyes and pursed lips as she quickly glazed the tray with sugar and cold water. Carolyn was washing her hands in a deep kitchen sink when Martin's stomach let out a loud and inconsistent growl. He clutched his stomach, face flushing deep and humiliated red. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I just didn't really have time for breakfast this morning. Arthur always has extra apples. I'll grab one of those and completely be fit to fly. I promise. Oh, go on, Carolyn sighed, waving a hand at the tray of buns. She crossed to the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of milk. Place her in the cupboard just in front of you. The napkins are behind you on the counter. Martin edged closer to the steaming trays, licking his lips. Really? Martin, have you ever witnessed me offer anything to anyone without meaning it? Don't expect such generosity every morning, but I shouldn't eat all these by myself at my age anyway. Oh, you're not so very, Martin, Carolyn said severely. If you intend to finish that sentence with any remotely like the word old, you should seriously consider whether or not you value your continued existence. Martin wisely fell silent and devoted himself to stuffing his mouth with hot, sticky, currant buns with the kind of fervor usually reserved for landing on a crosswind. Carolyn was torn away from the morbidly arresting sight by the ringing of her mobile. She glanced at the screen and flipped it open. Hercules, what an absurd time of the day to call. I sincerely hope you're not interrupting my morning for anything less than an invitation to dinner. So that is the story. I actually liked it. I think it's actually. I think I saw one grammar arrows near here. I can't. Oh crap! I think I forgot where it was. It was a single. It was a single grammar error. I completely forgot where it was. Damn it. However, I would like to point out a big problem with the story, and it's you're using commas instead of quotation marks. Honestly, it would actually be a 5 out of 5 if not for that. If it was like 1 or 2, then it wouldn't detract as much. But considering the fact this happens throughout the entire story, like the only thing I would change, just switch all the commas with quotation marks. I mean, seriously, it's literally every single piece of dialogue is quotation. It actually threw me off at first. Like it's really annoying. Like, and family. I actually do think family. It's fitting. It is about family. It's about the whole thing with emptiness syndrome. Basically, I did promise. For those of you who don't know, emptiness syndrome is what happened to a mother when all their children leave them. So they have a feeling of longing, and so they take it out and try to project their son on someone else. And so it kind of makes it kind of really hard for mothers to want to be alone because they're so used to being with other people, with children being there, and now they're just alone. And it happens a lot. It mostly happens with mothers. Like I've heard it happen with fathers, but it's actually very rare with fathers. But yeah, I actually really do like the story. I would sincerely give it a 5 out of 5 if not for the quotation errors. I will give it a 4.5 out of 5. But I will change it to a 5 if the error is fixed. If all these errors are fixed, just replace them with quotation marks, it would be a 5 out of 5. This story is really good. There is nothing I would really change. There is a grammar error somewhere in here, but I sincerely forgot where it was. Oh, that's bad. That's just bad. So that is my reading of A Quiet House. I really do. Again, I like the story. I like the idea of it. I like the execution. It's standard fare with emptiness syndrome. Like there's not really you can play around with emptiness syndrome without going too overboard. But it was executed really well. I like the idea. I like the pacing. The characters were good. Douglas was probably the best. Was I guess you can kind of weirdly say the main character. Him and Carolyn, and like Martin and Arthur were kind of played like it roles. Like they were the conflict, so to speak. I really did like it. I thought it was really good. So this has been Dark Symphony 777 and cut.